Welcome to IAB Canada's podcast, The Business of Digital.
Within hours.
Okay, well, thanks for tuning in, and I am happy to be here in Kitchener. Where am I? Am I in Kitchener or am I in Waterloo?
You are in Kitchener.
I'm in downtown Kitchener.
Downtown Kitchener, that's right.
Yeah, with Paul Briggs of eMarketer, and today we wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on at eMarketer, what's keeping you guys busy, what are you looking into.
Yeah.
I understand that there's a really cool report that's just being released, or has it come out yet? Maybe you can
talk. The Millennial report?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about 2 weeks away. So we've done all the legwork and the interviewing and the research for it. So it's in the process of being edited right now. So it'll be available in a couple of weeks from now, which would be sort of early to mid-June.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think everybody's sick of hearing the word millennial.
Yeah.
Is there something specific that drove you guys to look into that sort of age, into that age group? And also, can we just, for the record, define again for what a millennial is, because it feels like everyone's a millennial these days.
Right. So different research firms have different age bracketing for millennials. So typically you hear 18 to 34 right now. But a better way to look at it is the year of birth. So the way we had defined it is 1981 to 2000 would be anybody born in that range would be technically a millennial according to our definition.
Okay, so right after Gen X.
Yep, exactly. So,
okay.
But what we've done lots of reports on different demographics. Not only in the U.S. but globally. But for this Canadian one, we wanted to look at the millennial. So we did a millennial report a couple of years ago, but we wanted to come back to it because, frankly, we're getting a lot of demand for this millennial segment because people want to understand how to reach them. They're a sizable demographic. They're young professionals. Their disposable income is increasing. So brands really want to establish an attachment with millennials so that they can have a lifetime relationship with these young people. Mm-hmm. But I think it's folly to try to treat them as one group because that's a big wide age range. So what we did in this report was look at different personas of millennials, things like home buyers, worker bees, they're changing the workplace, and a few different other personas as well to really kind of help brands understand how to target these folks and which media is the best way to kind of engage with them.
That's great. So I'm assuming there's a lot of digital content that they're consuming and a lot of direction that you would then probably give brands to follow on the digital front. Yeah,
certainly. So not surprising to anybody, millennials in pretty much every form of digital media over-index or have higher usage rates, spend more time with it on an hourly basis per week than older generations. That's just sort of the digital native persona that they've cultivated and who they grew up with the internet, right? So, obviously content and social channels, massive, especially with the improved capabilities of awareness campaigns in places like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Content around video is huge too. And mobile, of course, right? So we look at, in the report, and share examples of companies in Canada that kind of thought about how to be relevant with millennials and design campaigns to do just that.
That's great. Are you able to talk about any one of those case studies or examples?
Sure. So Wealthsimple.
Okay.
So I talked to Wealthsimple and the marketing head there about what their approach was. And I think it was less about the channel for them, and it was more about the tone of the message, right? Okay. So as you can appreciate with Wealthsimple, those commercials that you see on television and various other digital forms are pretty informal. Mm-hmm. And their feeling is that, from what my discussion with them was about, they feel that type of messaging is a little bit more relevant to a millennial audience. So their prime target is sort of up to 45 years, so they kind of go big into millennials and certainly into Gen X as well in terms of who they target. But they've gone with, it was great. The campaign that they did late last year, late 2017, was basically just a documentarian, Academy Award winning documentarian, and just interviewed people. Like, there was no script, it was just complete informal, free flow discussion, and they've taken sort of the 20 most compelling interviews from that source material and made it the centerpiece of their campaign. So it was pretty cool.
That is cool. And when you think about that as a quality, right, this whole idea of informality, is that a theme that has emerged from the research as well? Is that something that you identified as being important to millennials?
I think it's more anecdotal, to be quite honest. It's hard to sort of see, it's hard to quantify tone in a message, right? I think you can look at campaigns that are particularly effective and the way they went about them, and I think it's more about anecdotal experience that brands have in creating a message that is more relevant to a younger audience, right? Or is more
relatable, I guess.
Relatable, kind of irreverent in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, sure.
The other thing, just to finish up that on the tone side, there tends to be a feeling among brands that I talk to anyway for this report that authenticity is a massive thing that you need to achieve in your messaging and in how you go to market with any product. So that became another thing that we heard, that authenticity is very important. Also because younger audience typically are more digital media literate. They kind of understand when they're being advertised to more so than other audiences. So their sensors for inauthentic messaging in digital channels is pretty high, and they will won't receive those messages very well.
Amazing. So having talked to a lot of marketers and agencies as well, working with millennials, you hear a lot about this theme of authenticity. And just a few weeks ago, we were doing a social media custom course for one of our members, and we were talking about the importance of recognizing that as a brand, you can no longer get by saying that you're cool. You actually have to be cool. Like, you have to be something as opposed to portray yourself as something. And it sounds like Simple and a couple of others are starting to figure that out and change their tone.
Well, we also talked to Vice Media for this report, and their head of sales in Canada basically said that trying to be cool is doesn't work.
You can't engineer it.
You can't engineer it. You can't hire a creative agency to make it cool, right?
Right.
You got to sort of...
At least not sustainably.
Right. And it's got to be part of your brand cultivation, I think.
Well, which is neat, and hopefully what will follow, and I think that this is something that IAB certainly in the U.S., we've definitely made a massive campaign now to move towards direct-to-consumer brands. Which to us signals that it's not just about the advertising campaigns, but there's actually a whole new economy that's emerging from this authenticity, from this informality, and from this direct approach and conversation that's now being carried out between brands and the consumers themselves. And when you eliminate those channels, the distribution channels, you really have a big palette of creativity at your disposal, and you're able to cut costs and cut a lot of the BS and have a little bit more swagger in the marketplace. Is that something that you've also noticed? Have you seen direct-to-consumer brands emerging?
Yeah, I think, and some people call it sort of part of the sharing economy, right? Like companies like Airbnb and Zipcar.
Right.
And others where, like for example, Simple has a affiliate marketing relationship with Airbnb. So if you so these are two brands that are trying to cultivate that audience, right? But it's very much about sort of what you mentioned in terms of that sharing economy type of message and service they provide to people.
I think it's also, in the fall, we're going to be doing our Mix event on September 18th, and we've got, not to plug it, but maybe also to plug it. And what we're discussing is, 2018, all the things that we've conjured into existence. And as marketers, as consumers, as ad tech, as everyone. And, obviously a big part of that is going to be, blockchain and artificial intelligence. But then also, again, these direct-to-consumer brands, because of the fact that they've managed to cut the bullshit, so to speak, and then just sort of, speak directly and also create... I don't know if you remember when Porter Airlines first launched. Mm-hmm. And it was this idea of, why do we have to do it the old way? There are no rules to this. Why are we following these leaders that have come before us when we could just reinvent this? Right. And perhaps this was also influenced by blue ocean strategies and all sorts of different, theories that were being floated around the time that some of these direct-to-consumer brands were being created. Mm-hmm. But these are starting to really nibble at the heels of some of the really large brands that are out there. And I wonder if you've seen any correlation to their success and the mediums and the types of campaigns that they're starting to use to get connected with the millennial group.
I think a big part of it is that because the millennial demographic is so influential mm-hmm. and so big, I think you're seeing these brands that appeal to millennials becoming more relevant and they don't spend money in a lot of the same ways as traditional brands, right? They don't just say, okay, here's our media budget. We're going to split it up a multitude of ways across traditional and digital channels. They get really creative on how they spend their money. And the good thing about digital is that it's uber measurable, right? Like you can measure everything about it mm-hmm. if you're measuring the right things, of course. But so I think in that case, that's what we're seeing those brands do very well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we saw the CEO of Away Luggage. Mm-hmm. She was doing a presentation at the annual leadership summit for IAB in California this year. And what was fascinating was the fact that she was talking about using the data. And this is, again, native data. So they don't know any other way mm-hmm. other than to use data-based marketing. But using that and then building out pop-up stores and retail locations based on the data that they're actually receiving from their marketing campaigns, which has completely thrown the retail market on its head. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was just really fascinating. That was a big aha moment, I think, for the crowd when people realized that everything that we had talked about when, 20 years ago when this whole thing started, was actually starting to come to fruition. And we were now actually starting to see digital leading activity in the marketplace and leading the economies and creating new economies and new opportunities.
Yeah, you mentioned blockchain a few minutes ago. We just published a report on sort of what blockchain means for the ad tech business, mm-hmm. And really we see 2018 as a year where it's going to be tested and become more proven to be an aid in increasing transparency in the digital supply chain for ads. Mm-hmm. So I think it's funny because every year there seems to be a new buzz term that gets everybody's attention, right? The way I see it, like this year, it's like blockchain. Last year was artificial intelligence. The year before that was probably augmented and virtual reality, mm-hmm. right? So every year there seems to be something new and interesting to delve into. And that's the thing with marketers too, right? Like I started out as a marketer around the year 2000, right? So I was a journalist. Then I got lured over to the dark side of working for a company and marketing for them mm-hmm. prior to the digital revolution. And life was way easier back then in terms of being a marketer and understanding how to get stuff to market and
less
create
choice.
messages.
The tyranny of choice is upon us, right?
Now it's like, now it's, you need to be a technologist almost to be a good marketer. Mm-hmm. And part of that is sort of keeping up with things like blockchain and AI and what they mean for the marketing business. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Big theme for us, certainly because of the fact that blockchain is something that, it's a little bit different. It's a little different from all the other buzzwords that we've had because it's fundamentally going to change the way the internet works in many ways. And so, we're talking a lot about this idea of, okay, well, we need to make sure that we're maintaining the current revenue streams and protecting the current marketplace while almost having one foot in the future and in the future camp, just to make sure that when the changeover, or if the changeover, but when the changeover, between us chickens, I think, when the changeover happens, we're prepared. And that, certainly from an IAB perspective, that our members are able to act on it quickly, that they're able to monetize in this new environment very quickly, and that we've been prepared, understanding how this works and what kinds of new options and marketplaces exist for the publishers, because it is going to be a big shift in control, right? Understanding who is going to be owning what now in terms of data, right? So, and all of the different partnerships. I'm very curious to see your report on the blockchain. That would be very, very interesting, because we just had a great ad tech council discussion around the different components of online advertising. They put out a white paper a few months ago, and south of the border, Boston, there's some sort of a conference that was going on, and they had asked for permission to use our white paper to discuss the different components of online advertising. And part of me was really, thinking about this whole idea of, wow, you guys are just wrapping your heads around how today works, when we're already trying to crack what tomorrow is going to look like. So that's
that blockchain content that I mentioned from eMarketer. So there is a full-blown report which is open to subscribers only, but there is some free content that we produce daily on our daily newsletter as well. So if people search for eMarketer and blockchain, they should be able to find some free content, which is a summary of the deeper report.
Perfect.
So you're not going to get like the real detailed analysis that's in the report. But if you are a subscriber, of course you will. But that's just some info on how people can learn more about it.
Yeah, that's great.
And
how did you feel after you released it? Knowing what the content is, do you feel optimistic about the industry, or do you feel like, wow, there's a tidal wave coming?
It has a tremendous capacity to change things. I think. But we do, the main conclusion that I saw from the report, I didn't write it, it was a colleague of mine that wrote that report, was that it's going to be a year of testing this year.
Sure.
And we're going to see what the potential is for blockchain to help the digital ad supply chain in terms of transparency and some of the other issues that are still plaguing the industry. So just like all new sort of technologies, there's a feeling out period or a period of testing that kind of has to take place. I think that's where we are right now with blockchain, and still with artificial intelligence, let's face it. I think the interesting thing is that all these tech trends are applying to multiple industries, right? They're not just marketing trends, right? Blockchain, AI, they're impacting every industry and every form of technology in a lot of ways. So I think that's another distinction that's different now than maybe before, when it was only about why marketers need to understand what this new technology is about. Now I think these are meta trends that are happening from a technological standpoint.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The fact that this whole is starting to leak out and transcend all industries. We were testifying in front of the ethics committee on PIPEDA, recommended changes to PIPEDA, especially in light of the GDPR going live this week on Friday. We talked about, there was some discussion around, just briefly, the right to be forgotten. And we were obviously prepared to respond. IAB was leaning in, and we were about to, we turned on the button to respond when the Insurance Association of Canada jumped the gun and sort of got, beat us to it and responded from their perspective. And that for me was a real eye-opener when I realized, oh my goodness, there are other sectors that are being impacted. We tend to live in this sort of, micro world of advertising only, which I think is kind of interesting when you taking it back to the millennials, because of the fact that this is transcending all of the different industries. It's hard not to know what's going on. right? It's hard for a millennial not to understand that there's a lot of conversation now happening about privacy, as an example, right? With the GDPR making a lot of noise, with Facebook being in the media, with all of the big players basically being in the media and being exposed and being put in the hot seat. There's just a lot of conversation around it. You can't not notice it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's some sort of a macro impact that is going to start occurring, and whether or not it's going to shift or shape opinion now that awareness is, pretty much undeniable, right? Like, if everybody's got the awareness, do you think that millennials, I don't know whether in your report you saw whether millennials care about privacy and or whether they're a little bit looser with their data?
Well, we didn't actually cover that specifically, but we do know, obviously they're more, I think they're more sort of digital media literate in terms of they know that the trade-offs are when they're using free content on the internet, right? Better than older generations. So I think the shift that we saw, and we covered in the report, was millennials are pretty much the majority of workers now in the workplace. So that's having a transformative impact on how companies do business, right? Do they rely on email primarily, or do they use Slack, right? What are the other tools that they're using to collaborate internally? And I think we're seeing that change quite a bit as well. And that's really about that open-mindedness to new types of tools to be more collaborative with your workers, right? And that's a big, there's a company locally here that has an artificial intelligence play for internal teams to get quick answers to questions, right? And
that's cool.
It's basically it kind of works with Slack, and
so it's leveraging its own intelligence.
Yeah, and it's basically a chatbot for. So if it's being deployed to sales teams primarily right now. So if a new salesperson starts at a company, and they want to find resources to do their job, the chatbot basically is their assistant to do that, as opposed to sending an email to like 3 people and getting an answer back. So
it's incredible. And garbage in, garbage out, right? So as long as the facts are in, and there's some really tight parameters around the quality of the inputs, that could be absolutely transformative to an organization. And that is, I think that in many ways was a holy grail that's been discussed for many years as well. I think about a decade ago, I was at a conference, and I remember one line from a Hewlett-Packard presentation. It was HP who got up and said, if Hewlett-Packard knew what Hewlett-Packard knew, it would be infinitely more successful. It would be like to the powers of I don't know how many, but it was an incredible presentation and very eye-opening. There are big organizations out there that have no idea of the gold mine of information that they're sitting on. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, and that's the
and that's Canadian. That's a homegrown company.
That's
awesome.
The name of the company is Kite, Kiite.
Okay.
Started up less than a year ago. It's being deployed to some companies locally and also in the U.S. And basically, the first job the technology does, the AI, is it consumes every piece of content that the company has produced. So it just gets it in. And then as a result, it can answer questions for people who have questions. So, and then obviously the machine learning aspect of it, where it starts to anticipate frequent questions and that sort of thing is a growing area of its effectiveness. But it's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, Kitchener and Waterloo, there's so many innovative companies around here. Like we're sitting here downtown Kitchener, we just look out the window here, and there's the best of the best tech firms in the world that have set up offices here. But then you've got the innovation and the entrepreneurial community and the startup scene, which is pretty awesome too.
Why is that? What's going on? What's the draw to Kitchener and Waterloo?
Well, I'd say there's a couple of factors. One is the universities and the colleges around here are they're world class. And they generate a lot of skilled talent in this particular business, right? This tech business, like software developers and so forth. Then, frankly, there's still an effect that RIM had. So Research in Motion was massive impact on this community for many years. As that company has become less of a leader, a lot of the people that work there have spun off into their own companies and are developing new solutions for all sorts of businesses. So I think that's another factor as well. But I think the universities, there's lots of great tech companies that are here, and I think that it's a nice fit for everybody.
That's great. Well, I'm driving up here. I got out of my car and I felt like I was on some sort of a weird ad tech movie set because it's miniature. It feels like a small place, but with a lot of, and I guess, intellectual property.
Yeah.
And a lot of really important signs for big organizations, right? So there's a lot going on here.
Yep, certainly.
Good stuff. Well, I appreciate all the information that you're sitting on, and look forward to the Millennial Report. And hopefully we'll have you in to speak to our councils and committees and possibly do some presentations on what you've found.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, and then hopefully we'll see you in the fall for our mix event happening in September.
I will be there for sure.
Amazing. Well, enjoy the rest of the day, and thanks for speaking to us.
Okay, thanks, Sonia.
Thanks for joining us on IAB Canada's podcast, The Business of Digital.